Hi, I'm Effie. This is What Effie Reads, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how I got on during Camp Spoopathon, the week-long readathon that was created by the amazing spoops over at Spoopy Hall. So I'll be honest, I had every intention of this video being a vlog, but really what it's ended up being is a selection of B-roll of places in my local area that I thought symbolised different places on the Camp Spoopathon map, and me kind of talking about the different books that I read during the week. But, spoiler alert, I completely failed Camp Spoopathon, so I guess I'm being murdered by one of the people patrolling the camp. Oh dear. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope this video makes sense, and just kind of buckle in and enjoy my Camp Spoopathon journey with me. The first prompt that I completed, and this is the whole thing, I ended up completing the prompt completely out of order and just getting completely lost at Camp Spoopathon. First prompt I did was Sleepy Hollow, which is read at night, and for that I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is Juno's adult debut, and it centres around a coven of witches who kind of work for the government, kind of not, and they're all panicking because there's been a prophecy about someone called the Sully Child, and you get to see the relationships between the different characters. You get to explore a really interesting magic system. I just absolutely adored this book. I think I read it in one night, maybe two. I listened to it whilst I was at work, and the audiobook is narrated by Nicola Coughlan, and it's fantastically done. All of the narration bits are in an Irish accent, but she does an incredible job of adapting the accents during the dialogue portions to the different characters. I thought this world was really well developed and really interesting, and the ending absolutely blew me away. I loved it so much, and I can't wait for the second book in the series, The Shadow Cabinet, to come out next year. The next place on the map and prompt I completed was Toolshed, and for Toolshed the prompt was murder, and for that I read One by One by Ruth Ware. This was another book that I consumed as an audiobook. I'd previously read one book by Ruth Ware, and that was In a Dark Dark Wood. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was fantastic. Unfortunately, One by One just didn't quite work for me. I initially was really intrigued by the fact that it opens by saying that 8 people survived and 4 people died. I thought that was a really interesting thing, but it just didn't do very much with it. And I could say the same about the social media app that was created for the book. So there's this app called Snoop that enables you to see what other people are listening to at the same time as they are listening to it. But not only that, it enables people to listen to the song at the very same point as someone else is listening to it. And I thought that was really interesting, but it was just massively underused. I feel like it could have been incorporated into the book in some really interesting ways, and there wasn't very much done with it. The way that it was used could have been done without this social media app, basically. There was also something that I'm not too knowledgeable on, like how GPS works, but there was this whole thing about like GPS locations, and the whole point was that GPS works without internet, but you need like internet to send the data across, but there wasn't meant to be an internet, so how were people getting the GPS? I couldn't quite wrap my head around it, and I wasn't sure if you were meant to suspend disbelief or whatever. But yeah, it just, unfortunately, there was a lot of extra information that didn't add very much to the story, and the fact that it opened with you knowing how many people died took something away from the story for me as well. I think it had a lot of potential. It was just probably a little bit longer than it needed to be. So, not a hit for me. The next place on the map that I did was Campfire Alpha, and for that, the prompt was ghostly. So I read Starvaker. I cannot remember the author's name off the top of my head, but I will pop a image on screen of the cover. It was one of those books that took its time, but I really enjoyed the kind of gradual build up, the kind of eerie horror of it, the way that it was dealing with grief, and also exploring the ways that these characters were dealing with their grief. I also really enjoyed the very subtle paranormal aspect to it, and the ending was so good. It wrapped it up so well and was a really satisfying ending. It's quite a short book, and it is kind of eerie and to an extent kind of timeless as well. Like, it could be set in modern day or it could be set in Victorian times. And yeah, I think it's one of those books that the less you know going in, the better. And I do recommend it, especially for people that are a fan of Gothic horror. The next prompt that I completed was for Campfire Beta, and for that the prompt was sprinting. So I chose to read The Sandman Volume 1 during reading sprints. I had wanted to at least read the first volume prior to the Sandman TV show coming out on Friday, and thankfully I did manage to do that. I have a vlog of kind of me reading it and my thoughts, but basically it was really nice to get back into this world. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. One of my favourite characters is Death, and we got to see her at the end of volume 1, which I really, really enjoyed. I love when she turns up. But also, I love the way that it very slowly builds the story. Like, to an extent, the Sandman feels kind of disjointed, but I like the way it slowly adds more and more until you see the full picture. But it's just genuinely so unique and something that I've been meaning to reread for a while. So I was very glad to pick it up again. And I will be reading the rest of the series, and I hope to have a video up next month. I'm also watching the show, so lots of Sandman content coming out at the moment. So if you're interested in that, subscribe and click the bell to find out when I put out new content. And just a little extra nugget of information. At the time of this video going up, I don't know how long this will be the case, but all 12 volumes of The Sandman are available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're interested in reading the source material, go check out KU. The next prompt that I completed was Lover's Rest, and for that I needed to read a deadly romance. I slightly stretched that one and I picked up Sandman Volume 2 by Neil Gaiman. At the start of this volume, I can't remember if it's the prologue or the first issue, but we have a romance that could be deemed as deadly. So I figured I would squeeze that into this prompt. I enjoyed this volume more than I enjoyed volume 1. I think partially because you could start to see the threads weaving into each other. I also enjoyed that it did some really interesting things. It felt almost mixed media in places, and there was also aspects of it where you had to rotate the volume to read it, and that represented some things that were going on in the story. Overall, really enjoyed it. I'm very excited to get cracking with volume 3, which I'm hoping to pick up soon, but I do have quite a full TBR this month. The next prompt that I won't say completed because I haven't actually finished this book yet, but the next prompt that I started reading a book for was Brad Oak, and as you can see, I managed to find a tree that looks creepily like a human being, and I was reading and still am reading this book, Hills by Ravenna Guron. The plot of this story is basically a young woman, she's 17 years old I believe, writes a short story for school, and in that short story it depicts someone being murdered, and then someone is murdered, and takes the details exactly from her short story and murders someone, and then send a very creepy text saying, "Thank you for the inspiration, I couldn't have done it without you." I am around about the halfway mark now and really enjoying it. It is a little bit slower than I was expecting, but it's a really interesting concept, and I think it's going to be quite intriguing to try and figure out who actually carried out the murder and just look at all the different suspects. I also think it does a really good job of dealing with racism and classism, as the protagonist is from a Bengali Indian background. She's British, her parents are British, but obviously whenever people look at her, all they see is her skin colour, and you've got the comments of, "Where are you from?" "London." "No." "Where are you from?" "London." "No." "Where are you really from?" "London." And that kind of comes into it. She's also a scholarship student, so you see a bit of classism, and you see the people that have a lot of money, and you also have the difference between generational wealth and the people that have just earned their wealth recently. So it's quite an insightful and interesting story so far. prompt that I attempted to complete was Pixie Park, and for that I needed to read together. So my book for that was, or still is, The Reckless Afterlife of Harriet Stoker by Lauren James. This is my buddy read with Shannon over at Head in the Books this month, and so far I'm really enjoying it. I would say I'm about a third of the way through, and it pretty much takes place after our protagonist has died, and she's trying to come together with the rules of her death, and she's not a very nice character, and it's just really fun to explore a nasty protagonist and also see all the different people that she meets. And since I have not finished this book, and also to an extent because I hadn't finished the previous book, I ended up dead. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. Love you. Bye.